The old folks told stories, stories about whispering pines. They said the wind carried voices, voices of the lost, lost in the woods, never seen again. Some said the trees whispered, luring people deeper, deeper into the shadows. Nobody dared go in, not after dark. One sunny morning, 4 friends set out to hike the trails of whispering pines. They laughed at the legends, called them old wives' tales. There was Jake, the brave one, Emily, the cautious one, Ben, the joker, and Chloe, the quiet one. They were young, they were fearless, they were wrong. The forest seemed ordinary at first. Sunlight through the trees, birds singing. It was a serene and peaceful place where the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds created a symphony of nature. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and earth. It was a place where one could easily lose track of time, enveloped in the beauty and tranquility of the surroundings. But as the sun began to set, the wind picked up. It carried a sound, a whisper, faint but there. The once warm and inviting forest began to change. The shadows grew longer, stretching like dark fingers across the forest floor. The trees, which had stood tall and still, now swayed and creaked in the growing wind. The air grew colder, and the once comforting sounds of the forest were replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional whisper carried on the wind.
It's just the wind, guys. Nothing to worry about. The forest can play tricks on your mind as the light fades. It's easy to imagine things that aren't really there. We've been here many times before, and it's always been safe. There's no reason to think anything has changed.
But Emily felt a shiver, a deep, unsettling feeling that something was amiss. She couldn't shake the sense of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the edge of her vision. The forest, which had always felt like a sanctuary, now seemed to close in around her, its once familiar paths now twisted and unfamiliar, a cold shiver down her spine. Something wasn't right. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as if trying to convey a message that she couldn't quite understand. Her heart raced and she clutched her arms around herself, trying to ward off the chill that seemed to seep into her very bones. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made her jump, her eyes darting around the darkening forest.
I don't know, this feels off. There's something about this place tonight that doesn't feel right. It's like the forest is alive, watching us, waiting for something. We should be careful. Maybe we should head back before it gets too dark. The forest can be a dangerous place when night falls, and it's better to be safe than sorry.
They stopped for a rest. Jake wandered off. It was supposed to be a short break, just enough time to catch their breath and enjoy the serene beauty of the forest. The sun filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Birds chirped, and the rustling leaves created a symphony of nature. Jake, always the curious one, decided to explore a bit further. "I'll be right back," he said with a casual wave. No one thought much of it at the time.
Just checking the trail. Jake's voice echoed faintly as he disappeared into the dense foliage. The trail was narrow, barely visible under the thick underbrush. He had always been the adventurous type, never one to sit still for too long. The group continued to chat and laugh, unaware of the growing distance between them and Jake.
Minutes passed, then silence. They called his name. No answer. Only the whispering wind. The forest, once alive with the sounds of nature, now seemed eerily quiet. The laughter died down, replaced by a growing sense of unease. "Jake!" they called out, their voices tinged with worry. But there was no response, only the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. Emily's voice trembled. Ben's smile was gone. The carefree atmosphere had vanished, replaced by a palpable tension. Emily's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of their friend. Ben, usually the joker of the group, was now silent, his face etched with concern. The realization that something was wrong began to sink in. Chloe hugged herself, her eyes wide. She had always been the sensitive one, easily spooked by the unknown. The forest, which had seemed so inviting just moments ago, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and hidden dangers. "Where was he?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The question hung in the air, unanswered and unsettling. Where was he? S2, media. Dense forest with no one in sight, empty forest trail with eerie atmosphere. Jake? The name echoed through the trees, a desperate plea for a response. The dense forest seemed to close in around them, the once familiar trail now a maze of uncertainty. Every rustle, every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat. The group huddled together, their fear growing with each passing second.
Jake, come on, man, this isn't funny. The voice was strained, a mix of frustration and fear. They had played pranks on each other before, but this felt different. The forest, with its darkening shadows and whispering winds, seemed to amplify their anxiety. Jake, please, the voice called out again, hoping for any sign of their friend.
Where did he go? The question was on everyone's mind. The trail, once clear, now seemed to twist and turn in confusing directions. The fog began to roll in, adding an eerie atmosphere to the already tense situation. Every step they took seemed to lead them further into the unknown, the forest becoming a maze of shadows and uncertainty.
Eerie whisper. Jake! The whisper seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a haunting echo that sent chills down their spines. The forest, once a place of adventure and exploration, now felt like a living entity watching and waiting. The group huddled closer, their fear palpable. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound seemed to be a reminder of their friend's absence.
Fear crept in. It was a slow, insidious feeling, wrapping around them like the mist that now enveloped the forest. The once familiar path was now a shadowy corridor, leading them deeper into the unknown. The realization that Jake was truly missing began to sink in, and with it, a sense of dread that they might never find him. The forest, with its whispering winds and rustling leaves, seemed to mock their efforts, a silent witness to their growing despair. Section 5. The Chase.
They ran through the woods, calling Jake's name.
The whispers grew louder. They seemed to be all around, mocking them, taunting them.
The trees grew thicker, the shadows deeper.
The path disappeared. We were lost in whispering pines, just like the legend.
Section 6. Eyes in the Darkness.
Something moved in the shadows. A pair of eyes glinted, yellow and cold.
The friends huddled together, their hearts pounded in their chests.
Who's there? Ben's voice cracked.
The eyes blinked, then vanished. They were being watched, hunted. A hand shot out from the trees, grabbing Chloe's arm. The forest seemed alive, its branches twisting and turning like serpents, reaching out to ensnare her. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Chloe's heart pounded in her chest as she felt the cold, clammy grip tighten around her wrist. She screamed, struggled, but the grip was too strong. Her voice echoed through the dense foliage, a desperate cry for help that seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. She kicked and thrashed, trying to break free, but the hand held firm, pulling her deeper into the forest. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, covered in roots and fallen leaves, making it difficult to find her footing. It pulled her into the darkness. The shadows seemed to close in around her, their inky blackness suffocating and impenetrable. Chloe's vision blurred as she was dragged further away from the safety of the clearing, her friends' voices growing fainter with each passing second. She could feel the cold, damp earth beneath her, the smell of moss and decay filling her nostrils.
No, let me go. Chloe's voice was hoarse from screaming, her throat raw and aching. She could hear the panic in her own voice, the fear that gripped her heart like a vice. She clawed at the hand that held her, her nails digging into the rough, bark-like skin, but it was no use. The forest had her in its grasp, and it wasn't letting go.
Emily and Ben reached for her, but it was too late. They could see her struggling, her form barely visible through the thick underbrush and the creeping fog that seemed to rise from the ground. Their hands stretched out, fingers grasping at empty air as they tried to pull her back to safety. But the forest was relentless, its grip unyielding. She was gone, swallowed by the shadows. The darkness enveloped her completely, and the last thing she saw was the terrified faces of her friends, their eyes wide with horror. The forest closed in around her, its whispers growing louder, more insistent. Chloe felt a chill run down her spine as the shadows consumed her, their cold embrace sending shivers through her body. The whispers seemed to chuckle. They echoed through the trees, a sinister symphony of voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Chloe could hear them all around her, their mocking laughter filling her ears. She tried to block them out, but they were relentless, their voices growing louder and more menacing with each passing moment.
She's ours now. The voice was low and guttural, filled with a malevolent glee that sent a wave of terror through Chloe's heart. She could feel the presence of the forest all around her, its ancient, malevolent spirit watching her every move. She knew deep down that she was trapped, a prisoner of the forest's grip, and there was no escape.
Panic surged. Emily and Ben ran blindly, tripping over roots. Branches whipped at their faces, but they didn't stop. They couldn't stop.
Keep running, Emily. Don't look back.
Then Ben screamed, a high-pitched, terrified sound. He vanished into the undergrowth. Emily didn't look back. She couldn't. She was alone.
Ben, no! Oh God, no!
Emily burst from the trees into the cool night air. She didn't know how she escaped. She just ran until she couldn't run anymore.
I made it. I actually made it.
Behind her, the forest stood silent, the whispers gone. The only sound was her ragged breathing and the beating of her own heart. They never found Jake or Chloe or Ben. The Whispering Pines had claimed them, just like the legend said it would. And Emily? She never spoke of that night, but the fear in her eyes told a story of the Whispering Pines, a story that would be told again and again and again